We begin with the breaking news coming from Australia. Scott Morrison will be the country's new Prime Minister after Malcolm Turnbull was forced out by party rivals. Mr Turnbull had been under pressure and then suffered a revolt by MPs. Mr Morrison, the current Treasurer, won an internal ballot over former Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton. A short while ago, Malcolm Turnbull spoke to reporters about the dramatic events of the last few days.
With politics, it's not about the politicians. That's why this week has been so dispiriting, because it just appears to be, vengeance, personal ambition, factional feuding, whatever you describe it. Hasn't had anything to do with 25 million Australians. And, the Australians we should be focused on, above all else, are these little ones. It is the next generation that we are working for here in this place.
So let's get more now from our correspondent in Sydney, Phil Mercer. Phil, Malcolm Turnbull there, the Prime Minister that's just had to step down, expressing his frustration of politics in his party that he believes is hindering progress.
Well, Malcolm Turnbull saying that many Australians, in his opinion, would be dumbstruck and appalled by this week's events in Canberra. I think it's safe to say it's probably the most destructive week of party infighting that we've seen in Australian politics in a very long time. You have to go back more than 10 years to find an Australian Prime Minister who managed to actually serve a full term in office. That was John Howard many, many years ago. And sadly for Malcolm Turnbull, his tenure in the top job has been cut short by what he's described as an internal insurgency. The new man in charge, Scott Morrison, he faces an immense challenge to heal a disunited and a chaotic coalition government in time for the next election, and all the signs are that doing that won't be easy.
Malcolm Turnbull praised Scott Morrison. He described him as a loyal ally within his party. Tell us more about him. As you say, he's got a big job ahead.
Well, he's known affectionately here in Australia, Scott Morrison, as ScoMo. He's a former immigration minister, a former social services minister, and most recently Treasurer. So he has been a key economic manager for the Australian government, and that will be one of the key assets he'll need to exploit between now and the next election. We're not quite sure when that will be. We're expecting the next federal poll in May, but events of this week may mean that Scott Morrison decides to go to the country earlier. He defeated Peter Dutton, the former Home Affairs Minister, by 45 votes to 40. So that margin of victory is quite narrow. Will Mr Dutton and his allies on the Conservative side of the government still agitate for change, even though they've been defeated today? We'll have to wait to see. But history does show that Prime Ministers have to have eyes in the back of their heads here in Australia, because it would seem, certainly in recent times, that there are always people after them.
All right, Phil, thank you very much. Phil Mercer, our correspondent in Sydney, wrapping up what's been quite a week there. Let's now take a look at more detail on the upheaval in Australia, because, of course, we have analysis from our correspondents, Phil, Hal Griffiths and others, but also a lot more there for you. So do take a look if you'd like to dig deeper into that story.